Good morning, Dr. Mom Live. Good morning, good morning. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm trying to get my series done over the 52 women of the Bible, so I'm going ahead and get it moving. I am a doctor of higher education, a mom, widow, grandma, friend, aunt. I got started on this influence other people to move forward in their life because I've been through quite a bit in mine, and I'm moving forward, and I'm trying to help others move forward as well. So this series for me is Women of the Bible. Well, sorry, it's moving forward in your life. I've experienced quite a bit of life-changing events over my lifetime, but also in the last 6 years. My husband passed away. I've went through the grieving process. I've finished my doctorate of education during the process of grief, which is difficult, life-changing event. I've sold my house and moved into an RV, and I've done a bodybuilding competition. I'm just moving forward, and so I'm trying to help other people move forward in their life. So what I decided to do after I sold my sold my house and bought an RV is to go ahead and do a series on women of the Bible, because I thought it would be easier to stay, since I'm going to be traveling, to stay on task. I don't know when I'm done with this. I'm at number 41 today, and I'm also trying to get it done before my grandkids get home because it gets pretty loud. So I'm going to go ahead and just work through this one. I feel like, it's funny too, because last week I did number 40, which was a woman who lived a sinful life. And once again, the woman is not referred by name, which we found in this study happened quite a bit. And the only thing I can find about it is simply the fact that the Bible was more, they wanted Christ to be the center of everything. And some of these women just simply didn't have to be named, right? Usually we're studying them because a person is providing an example of how these people were saved by the woman who lived a sinful life. Actually was very awesome because she had so much faith and loved Christ so much. She showed up at one of places where he was staying, and she was crying because she was so happy to see him, and actually used her hair to wipe his feet, because back then they walked everywhere in sandals and it was pretty dirty, right? This one, number 41, so we only have 11 left, is a woman with an issue of blood, which seems a little, I don't know, I'm like, I was talking to my daughter, I'm like, I don't know, it's not a very fun one, but it's a necessary one to talk about. So it doesn't say Miss Syswerda, when she wrote it, she does go through and kind of say, well, it could have been, they aren't saying what all it was, but we do know that she was bleeding in whatever form for 12 years. We don't know her age. We don't know a lot about it. We just know that she had this ailment. It could have been anything, but can you imagine? No, I can't imagine. And so what was her character? She was desperate for healing is what she was. So she had this. I mean, you're not really sick. You can't really tell the doctor, you're bleeding. So what do? I don't know in what form. I can't say how old she was, but I'm going to go ahead and read through this. But it would be difficult. So she was desperate for healing. She ignored the conventions of the day just for the chance to touch Jesus because she had heard about by this time his healing. So we're in Matthew 9, Mark 5, and Luke 8. So remember, let's see, Luke was a doctor, Matthew was a tax collector, Mark, I don't know if I did a study on Mark, but I'm going to. I will. I did one on John. I couldn't find a whole lot. These are the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the New Testament. And so all three of those refer to, and Matthew's 9, 20 through 22, Mark is 5, 25 through 34, and Luke is 8, 43 through 48. So all through the books, these books, they describe this woman. So it's important, right? So just the very fact, and we can have healing today, just the very fact that she believed it. All she knew, all I have to do is touch him and I'll be healed. But we have healing today because Christ gave his life for us, right? So this is the story of the woman with an issue, an illness for almost 12 years. So a large crowd followed and pressed around Jesus. And we knew that that's part of he was becoming very popular and there were thousands around him, right? And a woman there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. So we don't know in what form. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in a crowd and touched his cloak. Because she thought, if I can just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was freed from her sufferings. At once Jesus realized, so he knew somebody had touched him, that power had gone out of him. He turned around in a crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" Thousands, remember? Thousands of people around him, but he wanted to know who touched him. But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it, because he knew that this person had been healed. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." So this was the life and times of the sick woman. So any woman who had suffered through an issue of blood knows the difficulties and debilitating effects of the disease. When blood flows freely and frequently instead of in its regular monthly pattern, women endure not only the untidiness of the condition, but can also experience a loss of strength and weight. So she is referring to this, and she must have been a childbearing age, I'm guessing. Can you imagine? The woman in the story suffered from a hemorrhage for 12 long years. She was probably weak and thin. Because of the ritual uncleanliness that surrounds such a condition, she most likely didn't very often go out into public. Imagine 12 years of that, right? When a woman has a discharge of blood for many days at a time other than her monthly period, or has a discharge that continues beyond her period, she will be unclean as long as she has the discharge. And that's back in those days, just as in the days of her period. Any bed she lies on while her discharge continues will be unclean, as in her bed during her monthly period, and anything she sits on will be unclean as during her period. Whoever touches them will be unclean. He must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till evening. A woman was considered unclean for a mere 7 days when she had a regular period. This woman, however, that's Leviticus 15:19. This woman, however, bore not only the inconvenience but also the curse of being unclean for 12 years. Anyone and anything she touched became unclean. Imagine she gives her husband a plate of food and their hands touch. He's unclean. She gives her neighbor a hand with her laundry and their hands touch. She's unclean. Anything she sits on at home becomes unclean, as does anything she sits on at a neighbor's home or in public. Before long, everyone is aware of her uncleanliness and no one wants to be around her. That'd be difficult. Many different female conditions could have caused this woman's ailment: fibroid tumors, an infection, a hormonal imbalance. Whatever the cause, the doctors she had seen over the years had taken all of her money but given no relief. With the forthrightness and compassion that are characteristic of gospel writer Mark, he says this woman has suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors. In fact, at times, their cure was probably worse than their sickness. Still, no matter how much money she spent or how much agony she endured, her sickness seemed impossible to cure until she met the God of the impossible. What doctors couldn't do, Jesus could. No repulsive or painful remedies. No visits to doctors more interested in financial gains than in her cure. With just a soft, loving touch of his coat, she was cured. Healed, freed immediately. The glory of Christ is that he succeeds where others fail. He brings healing when doctors say none is possible. He offers forgiveness when the heart says it can never be forgiven. He extends comfort when the agony is too great to carry, and peace when all is chaos. He presented this sick woman with the possible after 12 years of the impossible. So that's the woman who was sick for 12 years. So, the questions are, so this goes on to the questions is, choose 3 words that best describe the kind of suffering experienced by this woman who had been sick for 12 long years. And it was a rough sickness. So I would say she was probably for sure lonely, probably afraid, probably very, I don't know, defeated, maybe. So that would be hard. So this is another thing that this author's saying is this woman probably accidentally touched someone in the crowd as she was trying to get to Jesus. So what do you think the crowd thought of that? And maybe back then they thought, well, if you're not healed, then you maybe aren't a blessed person. So in Mark, he says this woman was thinking, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. What does this tell you about this woman? How does this relate to Jesus? So she knew, probably by all of the healings that was going on and by hearing all of what people were saying, that her faith was strong enough that she knew all she had to do was touch him and she would be healed. I like this part. How might you feel if you had the opportunity to actually touch Jesus physically? Is there anything about this woman, or suffering, or actions, or healing that reminds you of yourself? What is it? Yeah, I think for me, like I can totally relate because in my 40s, it was my hormones were way off balance, and it was tough. I had a tough go of it. It was really hard, so I definitely could relate to her. And then they go on to say, why do you think the woman was afraid to admit she was the one in the crowd who had touched him? Well, maybe because we don't feel like we deserve it, and maybe she thought, well, I was stepping over a boundary or something. Why does Jesus call this woman daughter? And how do you think the woman thought by him saying that? Because we're his children, and I'm sure she was overjoyed, would be my question, my thought about it. So this woman had tried everything in order to be healed, right? She went to, how many have done that? Went to many doctors, and it's frustrating. When Jesus came to her village, she knew she had another option. How often do you try every other option to solve a problem before turning to God? Is he often a last resort? What would be a better way? That's what I mean. Like, we can be healed, but we have to believe it. So, okay, that's 41. Tomorrow's 42, and it's Herodias. Her name is the female form of Herod, means heroic. Heroic. So that's going to be interesting. And I'll try trying to get it done before the kids get here because it gets pretty loud. So, I think I did bring I don't know where it is. So anyway, let's see if I can find it. I do have it. Let's see. Today is, and that is the devotion for today. Today is, gosh, I don't know, the 29th, November 29th. Okay. Let me infuse my peace into your innermost being as you sit quietly in the light of my, and this is, I just want to, Sarah Young, Devotion of Every Day of the Year, Jesus Calling, for November 29th. My peace into your innermost being. As you sit quietly in the light of my presence, you can sense peace growing within you. This is not something that you accomplish through self-discipline and willpower. It is opening yourself to receive my blessing. In this age of independence, people find it hard to acknowledge their neediness. However, I have taken you along a path that has highlighted your need for me, placing you in situations where your strengths were irrelevant and your weaknesses were glaringly evident. Through the aridity of those desert marches, I have drawn you closer and closer to myself. You have discovered flowers of peace blossoming in the most desolate places. You have learned to thank me for hard times and difficult journeys, trusting that through them I accomplish my best work. You have realized that needing me is a key to knowing me intimately, which is the gift above all gifts. Isaiah 58:11 and Isaiah 40:11. So that's for today. I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead and get going, and I will do 42 tomorrow. So be well, my friends. Much love. Have a blessed week.